How do you live and manage your pain? This is Turning Pain into Strength with your host, published author, and certified health practitioner, Michelle Eberwein.
Hi, this is the Turning Pain into Strength podcast. I am your host, Michelle Eberwein, and thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I wanted to let you know that today's guest is a pediatric nurse, a mom. She has 2 daughters, and she is a domestic violence survivor. And her story is absolutely incredible. Definitely pay attention to towards the end what she has used to turn her pain into strength. I think you're going to find that really interesting, what she uses for her therapy tools. And I would like your feedback on that. So here is Mimi, everybody. Thank you so much. You are gorgeous.
Thank you.
Yes, you are absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
So tell me, what is your story?
Ooh, where shall I begin?
Wherever you want to start. What I'm trying to do is take people's stories, your darkest time, and how did you turn it around? How did you take your pain and turn it into strength to where you are today? So wherever you want to start in your life is totally up to you.
Okay. So my name is Mimi Randolph. I'm a wife, a mother, a grandmother. My career, I'm a pediatric home health nurse.
Okay.
I'm not practicing. I haven't practiced for about 4 years. I have to begin with, I guess, my marriage. I'm a domestic victim survivor. And I speak to my husband now, my estranged husband. We're still legally married, but we've been separated for quite some time, not in the same household.
How long were you married?
Let's see, our oldest daughter will be 37. So about 40 years.
Wow, long time.
A long time. His mother just recently passed. We had not been on the best of terms.
Okay.
And my mother-in-law, need I say, God rest her, I don't think she cared too much for me. We both are the babies of the family.
Okay.
And I say that I think that she thought that I was trying to keep her son away from her.
Okay.
And I tried to explain to her that was not the case. But inevitably, she realized that, and we did make amends. And she told me at one point, I don't care whatever happens between you and my son, you and those girls, we have 2 daughters, will all be my family. And prior to her demise, I hadn't spoken to her. I was at a convention. Her birthday's in September, and I was at a convention, and she wanted to speak to me. And so my daughters called me, and she was so elated. She smiled, and she, when she saw me, she thought I was my mother, who is deceased, and I'll get to that.
Yeah.
But that was a very difficult time for me when they called me and let me know, because she asked me to come see her. And I told her, I said, well, I'm at a convention, but I promise you, when I get back, I will get somebody to bring me to the hospital to see you.
Okay.
I did. And I to her and everything. And she was so happy to see me. And the funny thing, she recognized me, but she didn't recognize her son.
Oh, okay.
My husband.
Yeah.
And who is that? Who is that? And I said, that's your son. You don't know who that is? And she thought it was his dad, which is her estranged husband who passed away.
Okay.
But fast forward, and as I said, I'm a domestic violence victim survivor. I left my husband, moved in with my mother. And I told my youngest daughter I was leaving. I said, you're more than welcome to stay here with your dad, because I never wanted my kids' my problem between their dad and I to be their problem.
Right.
And our youngest daughter was like, our oldest one was already out of the house.
Okay.
And my youngest daughter said, no, mommy, I'm going with you. So we
Yeah.
moved with my mom for a while. And then we moved out. Our youngest daughter got pregnant, so we moved out, my youngest daughter and my grandbaby and I.
Okay.
And we stayed in that apartment. Unfortunately, my mother's health started declining.
Okay.
As I said, I'm the baby. I'm the baby of 6.
Wow.
So I was back and forth, seeing about my mom. Realized she was having some, some memory loss and some health issues. So I eventually moved her in a 2-bedroom apartment. So in this 2-bedroom apartment, there was myself, my mother, my youngest daughter, my granddaughter, and at some point, my oldest daughter and her significant other. So,
wow.
Yeah, and my brother. I'm sorry, my brother had gotten out of prison, and he came. I was writing back and forth to him because our mother's handwriting had gotten to where he couldn't read it. And so I was keeping him informed as to what was going on with our mother. And I told him when he got out of prison, he had a home, he could come live with me, provided he, take care of our mom, because I still had to work. So and now, like I said, let me go back. There was my brother, myself, my oldest daughter, her significant other, my youngest daughter, my granddaughter, and my mother in a 2-bedroom apartment.
So it was very quiet there. Okay, so all these people and you're taking care of almost everybody.
Pretty much, because our youngest daughter had come from college. She was in a private college down in Fort Lauderdale. And needless to say, my estranged husband was not financially helping as he said he would. And, we had resourced all financial situation. I was sending her money, putting money in her account every month. And it just got too overwhelming for me. So she decided to come back, and then she slipped into a depression. So now I'm taking care of my mom. I'm taking care of my daughter, my granddaughter. My daughter didn't bond with my granddaughter initially. So the first probably year and a half of my granddaughter's life, I was there for her. I told my daughter, just take care of yourself, because she was suffering from postpartum depression.
It sounds like it, yeah.
So fast forward, and my mother's health was declining. And as I said, I still had to work because I had to pay the bills.
Sure.
I had to hire somebody to come in because my brother was there when I was gone, and it was getting taxing on him, because he was there, and it was like an ongoing 24/7, thing with my mom. And mind you, like I said, I had other siblings.
Sure. But it's on your shoulders.
Right. One of my older sisters, she and I forgot to bring that part up. She had been diagnosed with a rare form of cancer.
Your youngest daughter?
Oh, one of my oldest sisters.
Okay, your sisters. Okay, one of your sisters.
She had been diagnosed with a rare form of cancer, so she was, she was taking care of her own health.
Yeah.
So really depend on her. My oldest sister, she told me, basically they had a meeting and they said, well, you can't keep doing this. And we got our family, so we can't do this. And so, we think it's best that you put mom in a facility.
Who's going to pay for that?
Right, exactly. And not only that, I'm a nurse. What does it look like me putting my mother in a facility and I'm going and taking care of other people's loved ones?
Right.
And it's not happening. I said, no, that's not going to work for me. So they said, well, what are you going to do? And so I told them, well, I'll hire somebody. And they said, well, you can't afford it. I said, well, no, financially I can't, but you know what? I'm gonna make it work. So I did wind up hiring somebody, and that took some pressure off of my brother, but
Yeah.
that still left me on the weekends. So
Okay.
I tell everybody, my mother was my rock. She was my ride or die. She was everything. She was there for every accolade I achieved. She was there at the head of the bed when I birthed both my daughters. She was there when I walked across that stage and graduated from nursing school. She was there all of my accomplishment. When I had my own business for like 7 years, she was right there. I sold lingerie. And I told people, I always joke about this. I said, my mother didn't wear lingerie, but because her youngest daughter was selling lingerie, she supported me. So
Yeah.
she, so it was befitting for me to be her caregiver. So I took care of her, my brother and I had to send her out. She got, really bad. I had to send her to the hospital. Um, and she was there, and they came in. She was not a DNR, which means not a do not resuscitate. She was
Yeah.
not. She did not have a DNR.
Mhm.
So there were 6 of us, so we had to make a decision, and that was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make. So 3 of us was for it. Well, 4 of us was for it, and 2 of us were against it. And the nurse said all they needed was half. Since it was 6 of us, they just needed at least 3 of us to agree to it. So we agreed to that, and I told them, I will bring her back home. I'm going to keep her comfortable. I promised her that I would not allow her to die in some facility.
Okay.
So I brought her back home, and I kept her. I brought in hospice, and hospice was there one night, and the next morning, when they changed shift, the nurse came in, and I got up, and I went in as my usual, speak to my mom, and I had my granddaughter, and I was supposed to take her to daycare, but for some reason I couldn't take her. I kept making excuses. I kept saying, "Well, I'm gonna take my granddaughter. I'll run." And I said, "I have my cell phone. If something happens, call me, and I'll come right back." And the nurse, she looked at me and she said, "Well," and I went in and looked at my mom, and I said, "You know what? I
You
think
had a
I'll leave."
feeling.
I had that feeling.
Mhm.
And so fast forward, and being a nurse, I saw her decline, and I saw when the changes of her getting ready to cross over. So
Yeah.
I called my siblings and my nieces and nephews, and I was like, "Hey, if you want to see mom, grandma, you better get over here." So my youngest brother, it was on a Friday. It was on a Friday. And I had taken off. So I gave him the time off to go do whatever. And so he came, and he and I were there at the bedside when our mother took her last breath. Everybody started coming in after. The nurses, they did their routine. They got her. Well, let me back up. We were sitting at the bedside, and I was talking to her, and the nurse said, turn on some music. So I turned on some music in the background, and we was just sitting there, and I was watching her. And so I went over to her and I kissed her. And of course the tears started streaming, and
Yeah.
I put in her ear and I said, "Mommy, if you want to go, it's okay. I know that we're gonna be okay. I know you're probably gonna be worried, but we're gonna be okay. I release you, you know. I don't want you to suffer."
Yeah, no more suffering.
Right. And when I said that, she cast up her eyes and she went, and that was it. And he came over to me and he says, "I'm going to give you some advice someone gave me when my father passed." He says, "It's time for you to take the nurse hat off now and put on the daughter's hat." And I said, "Thank you." But I didn't know how to do that.
Right. It's almost like a protection for you, protecting your heart.
Exactly. And again, like as I said, I was the youngest, but I felt I needed to be strong for everybody else. I,
Mhm.
I I felt I needed to be strong. I couldn't show weakness. I couldn't break down. I couldn't grieve because if I broke down, and I felt, everybody else would.
Right.
And so I went on. We made all the my oldest sister and I made all the arrangements. Everybody else, they kind of said, agreed, whatever, you guys decide, we'll go along with it. And then life just went on for me. But I began spiraling out of control and not realizing I wasn't eating. I wasn't sleeping. I couldn't sleep. I was going and going, and I worked. Now, mind you, I worked 12-hour shifts,
Okay.
and I worked 5, sometimes 6, 12-hour shifts a week, and was not sleeping, literally. Like, I would get off, and I worked 2 jobs. So I would get off one job, come home, shower, change, and go to the next job. And I did that for quite a time. And, I made it look good. Nobody checked on me. Nobody, you know, um, didn't suspect anything. Oh, I'm sorry. My mother died in April. So my birthday was in May, and May 25th. And the morning of my birthday, I laid in bed, and I guess it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I laid in bed, and I couldn't get up, didn't want to get up, didn't care to get up. And everybody that know me know that, I'm gonna say I love my birthday. I celebrate the entire month of May for my birthday. And so my girls came and they were like, "Mommy, what are you gonna do for your birthday?" And I was just like, "Leave me alone."
Oh,
And it's
yeah.
like, Mom, you gotta get up. And so I told them to come lay in the bed beside me. So they did. And, I felt close to them. I felt pretty good. But then they kept saying, "Mommy, you gotta get up. You gotta get up." And I said, "Leave me alone. I don't want to get up. This is the first birthday. My mom's not here. I don't care. I don't care about a birthday. I don't want a birthday. It's like, just leave me alone." And so they kept nagging me and nagging me. And so I told them, I said, "Okay, well, take me to the beach." Because water has always been tranquiling for me, always been soothing, calm.
Mm-hmm.
So I wound up, I did go to the beach that day. Um, and I remember lying on the beach and looking up at the sky and saying, "Okay, Ma, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this."
Yeah.
Um, and my girls was like, "Come on, Ma, you got this. You got to be okay. Um, and I just didn't think I could make it. But I wound up going home. And as I said, back to where I was left off, I was just going on adrenaline, literally, not eating, not
Yeah.
sleeping. Didn't realize I was losing weight. And I kind of sunk in. I stopped talking. I would not even, I wouldn't talk. I stopped answering phone calls. I stopped answering texts. I got off of social media. My siblings would text me. I wouldn't respond. I wouldn't respond to texts. I wouldn't answer phone calls. I woke up one morning and I found myself in my closet sitting on the floor,
Wow.
and I started crying uncontrollably. I thought I would never stop. I cried, I cried, I cried, I cried. And it was like, I can't stop. I can't stop. So I pulled myself together. Like I said, I hit it very well. And I continued, going to work, doing this 2015. So I moved out of that apartment, um, had to move back in the house with my strange husband, and I was there, um, and then our home went into foreclosure.
You're strong. You're a very, very strong woman.
Mm. And my youngest daughter and my 5-year-old granddaughter, we became homeless. I
Wow.
was still working, so I financially was able. I went and I got a hotel, and we lived in a hotel for about 3 months. And I told my youngest daughter, I says, "You go find an apartment for your daughter, for my granddaughter, and mommy will be okay." Um, I'm
No, don't be sorry at all.
sorry. So she went and found an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment, for her and my granddaughter. My husband, I don't know where he went. And I stayed in the hotel for about another month. She says, because when she first got the apartment, it wasn't ready. This was the foreclosed on the house. I want to say June. And so I told her, um, like in August, I says, go find an apartment. Well, the end of July, I says, you go find an apartment because it was summer. And it was getting ready to be school. And I said, my grandbaby needs to be stationary, for school.
Yeah.
So I says, go find an apartment. And she found an apartment, but the apartment wasn't going to be ready until like September. So we stayed in the hotel. And when the apartment was ready, I told her to go ahead. And when she says, Mommy, are you coming? I said, no, not yet. It wasn't time. So I stayed in the hotel for like maybe another month. And then, until financially I couldn't afford it anymore. So,
Right.
uh, and then it was time. The people at the hotel, they were very nice. They were very accommodating, very nice. They gave me a good deal. In fact, when I got ready to leave, they're like, "Are you leaving?" I'm like, "Yes, it's time." So
Yeah.
I moved in with my daughter, my granddaughter, in a two-bedroom apartment. Stayed with them for a while.
Mm-hmm.
One of my daughter's friends had to move in, so I got another apartment and I moved out. Again, I'm working 12-hour shifts. I'm working.
Right.
I'm
Things are
in.
looking better.
Yeah. Um, I'm in my apartment. I'm fixing it up. I'm thinking I'm doing good. And I don't know what happened. Um, well, I kind of sort of do know what happened. I got to the place where I wasn't sleeping again. I wasn't eating. I couldn't sleep. I had insomnia really bad. I would try to sleep and I couldn't sleep. So I started having dark thoughts.
Okay.
Um, I started hearing voices. I started seeing things. I became so paranoid. Um, I would cover the television. If the television wasn't on, I would cover it. I kept it dark in the house at all times. I wouldn't open the blinds. I kept it dark, kept the television covered. And mind you, none of my family didn't realize, didn't think anything about it, didn't know. My youngest daughter, she would come in and out every now and again.
Mhm.
And so
How long did this go on for?
this went on um for about a year and a half. Well, before she realized it probably went on about a year before she
Oh,
realized something was really going on. My daughters, they did not realize something was going on. And I, she started I started being really paranoid. So I started feeling like people were following me. I felt like when people would have telephones, their cell phones, and they'd be on video calls, I felt like they were recording me. So I would spaz out. Like, why
yeah.
are you recording me? Stop recording me. And people would be looking like, what is wrong with this crazy lady?
Sleep
And
deprived and breaking down. Your body is breaking down.
completely. Um, I felt like when I was on the phone, I felt like people were listening to my phone conversations, so I wouldn't answer the phone. One day, my daughter, they were calling and calling, and I'm like, I'm not answering that phone because I know they can't tell me. I said, I know people are listening to my calls, and I'm not answering the calls. So my daughter came over there one day. She says, "Mommy, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She says, "We've been calling you all day. You're not answering the phone." I'm like, "I'm okay. I'm okay." Again, I'm still hiding it. I'm working two jobs.
Right.
My day job was a medical daycare,
Mhm.
and so very critical, kids. And I started feeling paranoid there. I felt like people,
Oh,
they were watching me. They were trying to set me up and make me lose my job. And so one day I left the job walking, and I didn't know they called my daughter because I put my daughter down for my emergency contact.
mhm.
And so I left the job walking. I said, I'm leaving, I'm out of here. And the supervisor, was trying to talk to me, and I was like, I'm leaving, because I felt like I said that, they were conspiring against me.
Wow.
So my daughter called me and she says, "Where are you?" And I said, "Why?" And she says, "Your job just called me and said you left." And I said, I said, those people are getting on my nerves. I said, and I started running down. I said, they're talking about me. And I said, they're conspiring against me. And they're trying to make me lose my job. And I said, I got to protect my license. And she was like, Mom, it may be, maybe it's all in your mind. I said, I know what I saw and I know what I heard. And she's like, okay, Mom, calm down, calm down.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine I allowed him to borrow my vehicle and he had dropped me off. So I called him, he came and picked me up and I went home. But I still wound up going to my night job in spite of all of this happening. Then at my night job, the same thing. I started feeling like, that people were watching me. Then I started feeling like I started hearing voices literally out of the vents. I felt like, the people in the leasing office, they were conspiring against me. It got so bad. At one point, and I never told anybody this, I even went to the police department and asked them, was there a warrant out for my arrest?
Wow. And there wasn't. You were just thinking that there was.
I was just that paranoid. It was in my mind, but in my mind, everything that I saw, heard, experienced, it was all surreal to me. So
Complete psychosis.
I wound up moving out of the apartment and well, no, let me back up. Before that, um my daughters finally realized something was going on, so they contacted my oldest siblings,
Okay.
and I wasn't aware of that. And so my sister called, and again, I was still hiding stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I wound up moving back in with my daughter for a brief time, and this is one of the lowest moments. I just felt like the world was against me. I couldn't couldn't think clearly. And so, my thoughts were, I'm just gonna end it. I may as well just go ahead and end it.
Don't want to
And
feel the pain anymore.
it was a Sunday morning, and I'm a church going believer.
Yeah.
And so I got up and I got dressed for church, and I didn't tell my daughter anything because I already had my plan. My daughter, she's licensed to carry, so she kept her gun in her glove compartment in her car. So I already had a plan.
Okay.
So I told her, I said, okay, baby, I'm going. She said, you going to church? I said, yeah, I'm going to church. But I conveniently left my phone because I did not want anyone to call me and try to stop me. And I did go to church, but I sat up in church, so empty, didn't feel nothing, just sat there. And normally after church, we kind of stand around and we kind of talk and, conversate. And I did none of that. I was very distanced from everybody, and I left, and I'm driving my daughter's car, and I went to a park and I sat there, and it was raining on and off. And I sat there and I began to cry, and I just cried and I cried, and I just sat there. And cars were coming up. They would come up beside me and they would sit there and then they were leaving. So now, granted, I'm paranoid. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking like, okay, I'm thinking like they done called somebody, they're trying to come and get me. They're gonna put me away. All
Yeah.
of this stuff is going on in my mind. So I said, okay, this is it. So I reached over and opened the glove compartment. Lo and behold, the gun wasn't there. It wasn't there.
Wow.
It was not there. And so I cried even more. I was like, God, I can't even get this right. So I sat there. I don't know how long I had even been sitting there. I sat there for quite some time. And so finally I said, well, I may as well go on back to the house. So I cranked up that car and drove back to my daughter's house. And when I got there, um, she had called her oldest sister, and
Mm-hmm.
they was there. And she's like, Mommy, where have you been? We've been looking all over. We were so worried about you. And I'm just like, and so I sat down, and my oldest daughter, she's very emotional. She said, Mom, what's wrong? What's wrong? I said, I don't know. And then I told them what my plans was and what I was going to do. And my youngest daughter she said, something told me, she said, I'm so glad I took that gun out of the car. She said, something told me to take that gun out of the car. She said, somehow, she said, I knew. She said, and something told me to just take that gun out of that car.
Wow.
And yeah. And after that, they called my siblings, and my older sister came. She called me, and I wouldn't answer her call. And so finally I answered, and she says, what's going on? And I said, I don't know. And she said, where are you? She said, you stay right there. Don't you move. I'm coming to you. And my oldest brother, he was coming in from out of town. And so he came over and he talked to me, and he said, and he was like, what's wrong, baby sis? And it's like, I don't know. And so when my sister got there, I started telling her everything that was going on.
I feel like, yay, there's help now. There's help for you. The help is here.
All the things that were going on. And so my sister she says, well, I'm going to take you home with me. And she says, do you mind? And I said, no. And so she said, well, you stay the weekend with me. And she says, and Monday morning, she says, we're gonna get you some help. She said, are you willing to get help? And I said, yeah. I mean, I've resourced everything else. I said, I'm willing.
That's a huge step.
I was, I mean, let me tell you how bad I was. I would not even go outside. I could not go outside. I would be crawling around on the floor, peeping out of the curtains. I was there, in the house, and I think the neighbors finally told my daughter in the leasing office, because they wouldn't see. They said they didn't see me stirring around. They didn't see me coming outside. They said it was all dark, in the apartment and so forth. And I even went to the leasing office and was telling them people were coming in my apartment. I was hearing, voices through the vents and so forth. And they kept saying, Miss Randolph, nobody's coming in your apartment. You've already, you have to authorize even for the maintenance people to come in there. And I was like, I know what I'm seeing. I know you can't tell me. I mean, I did some crazy things. I mean, I tried to do things to set up where I could know if they had been to I would put the chair behind the door when I would go to bed at night. There was a lock on the door. I would lock the door, but then I would put the chair up underneath the doorknob so I could hear if somebody was coming in.
Right. You were just so incredibly broken. Your mind, your body went into a psychosis as like a form of self-protection.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So how
So
did you go into a treatment? Like
I
an
did.
inpatient?
I did. I went to a mental health center
Okay.
for a week.
Mhm.
Um, and when I went in there, my sister took me in. Well, she first had to call around to see who would accept my insurance.
Sure.
Insurance I had at the time.
I know, because
And
that's the most important thing in our healthcare system is the insurance, not the human being.
not a human being, yes. And so they sent her to one place, and we went to a place, and it's actually, I used to work for this agency, and it was the agency for substance abuse.
Okay.
And so the lady, she says, well, let me interview her and see what's going on. And so my sister says, not without me. And so she asked me, of course, due to the HIPAA law, she said, well, do you mind your sister coming in? And I was like, no, of course not.
Mhm.
And so she was asking me all these questions, and I was getting irritated. And so she says, well, I have to ask. And she says, do you, and she looked at me, she says, do you use drugs? And my sister says, absolutely not. My sister has never, ever used drugs. And she says,
You
I'm
work with
sorry.
babies.
Yeah. She says, I'm sorry, but I have to ask, and
Yeah,
I because of my behavior.
right.
And so she says, unfortunately, we can't do anything here. She says, we only work with, people with substance abuse, alcohol, drugs, and whatever. But she gave her the name and a number of another place to go.
Okay.
So, we went over there, and so they had to do an intake. And so we were sitting down, And mind you, like I said, I'm very, I'm anxious, I'm paranoid, I'm
Sure.
shut down, I'm not talking, I'm all of these things is going on. And so, I'm sitting and I'm waiting and I'm just getting, my anxiety is like on 10.
Yeah.
And so I jump up and I'm like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. And my sister sitting there, she's like, calm down. So I said, I gotta get out of here. So I walked outside, but I could hear them and they had an intercom and they said, well, do you think she's coming back? And she
Mm-hmm.
said, she's not going very far. And so I stood out there and I took some deep breaths. So when I come back in, and my sister says, listen, she says, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to keep her here. How much longer is it going to take?
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in this chair, and this woman comes and sit beside me. And I guess she was leaving, being discharged.
Oh,
And
okay.
she had this bag, this plastic bag.
Mm-hmm.
And she's rattling this bag, just rattling this bag, going in and rattling this bag. And I said, stop it. I can't take it anymore. And she looks at me, and I jump up and I run, and my sister's like, where are you going? And I said, I can't take it anymore. So I go outside and I'm standing out there and I'm walking around and I'm talking to myself, and so I see my sister get up from the chair, and so she motions for me to come back in. So I come back in, and so I move to another chair. My sister sits between me and the lady, and my sister said, listen, my sister is in bad shape. I need some help now.
Yeah.
And so they called me, and they asked me all these questions and so forth. And, I got admitted, excuse
Mm-hmm.
me. Um, and I was there for a week. I saw the therapist, and he asked me, he says, so I understand you've been hearing voices. And I'm like, yeah. And he says, well, are they real? And I said, well, they sounded real to me. Are
Right?
you real?
Good grief. Are they real?
I'm like, they sounded real to me. Are you real?
Right.
And so I was there for a week. And for the first 24 hours, I couldn't see anybody. Nobody could visit me. Nobody could call me. I couldn't call out. Um, and I just was telling my godmother this. The food was horrible.
Oh
I said,
no.
it was horrible. And mind you, like I said, I wasn't eating anyways. So I got in there and I still wasn't eating because I'm a visual person and a texture person. And the food, it looked like something I wouldn't even get to a dog or a pig.
Oh,
Um,
that's
and
awful.
it was unidentifiable. I couldn't even, I asked one of the employees there, when he came over to me, he said, Miss Randolph, you're not gonna eat your food? And I looked up at him, I said, are you gonna eat it? Would you eat it? And he just kind of like,
Nope.
I
Good
said,
thing
what is
it's
it?
only for a week.
Right. I said, what is it? And he goes, well, right. You don't even know what it is. You can't identify, but you want me to eat it. He
Right,
says, well,
yeah.
you gotta eat something. I said, well, I'm not eating that. So I survived off the cereal and fruit and
Okay.
potato chips and stuff like that because
Mhm.
I refused to eat. And so I stayed in there, and I asked the therapist told me um, one morning I saw him. He says something about me being Baker Act, and I says I was not Baker Act. I said I volunteered and came in here. I said I volunteered. I knew that I needed help, but I volunteered. And so he asked me who my sister was. He says, well, who is my sister name? And I said,
Mhm.
that's my sister. And he says, well, she brought you in. And I said, yeah, but because I couldn't drive. Oh, and
Right.
that was the other thing I
Driver.
forgot. I couldn't drive. I got to the point where I could not drive. I sit in the car and I would shake
Yeah.
violently, shake, and I
Oh,
could not drive. And I was so paranoid.
sure.
And so, like I said, I was in there for a week. I got discharged. I went back, to my sister's,
Mhm.
stayed there temporarily. Then I wound up going back to my youngest daughter's home for a little bit. I still was pretty paranoid because I could not go outside. I just couldn't. My granddaughter was my security blanket.
Okay.
Um, During my whole time, my whole crisis, my my youngest daughter teased me because she said I didn't like her, and I said I told her it wasn't that I didn't like. I just didn't trust anybody.
Yeah.
My granddaughter was the only person that I trust, and I said I can understand now why they say the innocence of a child because she was the only person that I would trust. I would talk to, would go any place with. If she wasn't going, I wasn't going. I didn't trust anybody. And when we went places, certain places in public, I would sit in the car. My daughters, we would go to like the shopping center, to the grocery store, something like that. I would sit in the car because I still had that phobia
Yeah,
of people
that's a
staring at
lot of people to deal with right away.
me. Right. So through a lot of prayer and therapy, um, I I'm doing better. I'm on a healing journey.
Okay.
I said I'm in Virginia. I still have that little phobia of going out and being around people. But last week I actually took a lift and went to the movies by myself
Oh,
alone. Alone.
wow.
And I had to post it on social media. And I said, for those of you don't realize, I said that may seem like something mere and small, but for those of you who know my story, know that that is a big mile, a big, big deal for me.
That's a huge step.
Huge, yeah, because I would not even leave the house, even up until recently. I'd go to church. My sister would pick me up, my granddaughter and I, for church. I go to church on Sunday, and I come back home, and I'm in the house for the rest of the week until the next Sunday. So that was a huge deal for me to
How
get
did you do
whole
that?
nother city to get in a lift and go to the movies by myself.
How did you how did you do that?
I was in therapy. I did, and another thing, I couldn't go physically to see a therapist. I did virtual. Like now, I had to do virtual therapy because I could not go in.
That's all
And
right.
the therapist that I spoke to, she was a young lady. She was about one of my daughter's age, and very, very beautiful soul. And I got her. She was fresh out of school, so I said to her, I said, you didn't have time to get tainted. So, and she really, really helped me tremendously. Uh,
Wow.
I almost had a setback because the first thing when I first got with her, she read some of my case because she was working for the company where I went into the mental health center.
Okay.
And, the first thing I told her is, I have an issue with people leaving me.
Mm.
And I said, are you going to leave me? And she says, no. She says, because I have to be here for at least 2 years because eventually I want to have my own practice.
Mhm.
And so it took some time for me to trust her and open up to her, but
Yes.
eventually I did.
Mhm.
And so, um, two um, sessions before she was going to leave, she told me, she says, I have some bad news. She said, I don't want to tell you this. And I said, what? And she says, what? She said, I got a better offer, a better job. And she says, I got to take it. And so, my last month, and I just shut down and I stopped talking. And she says, what are you thinking? And she says, tell me. She says, what emotions, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? And so she said, it's okay to cry because every session for, I think I saw her for like 6 months. I think almost every session I cried, and I said, I know you're tired of me crying, and she says, no. She says, no, that's what I'm here for. She said, if you
Healing.
need to cry,
You're letting
cry.
it all out to heal.
And so when she told me that, I told her, I said, I can't talk to you right now. And she says, I understand. She says, I understand, but she says, I got to do this. And so my next session, she says, so what are you feeling? And I told her, I said, I'm angry. I'm hurt. I said, I don't know if I'll trust anybody again, and I said, I don't want to go back to where I came. I don't want to go backwards. And she says, she gave me a lot of exercises to do. And she says, you'll do fine. She says, you'll do fine. She says, from the first day from when I met you up until now, she says, you've come a long ways. She says, and she says, she said, you're not that, as scared, you're opening up, you're talking. She says, you've come a long ways. And as I said, she gave me a lot of exercises to do, and that was one of the things that we were working on. I told her, and the funny part about it is, for me to have this phobia, on my 50th, I think, birthday, I traveled out of the country by myself.
Wow. Who
So
are
I
you?
so I mean, solo, all alone. I booked the trip, and I did it, and didn't think about it. So for me to be, to go through that transition of being so paranoid to where I'm afraid to even walk out of the door,
You're
it
gonna
was
make
a
me
lot.
cry. I'm not supposed to be crying on my podcast. I mean, I feel that pain that you went through with your mom. I went through a similar thing with my dad. So I was already relating to you, and just not the voices or anything, but we've all been in that dark place. And when you meet somebody else and can connect with them because of that dark place, it's heartbreaking because you don't want anyone to feel that either. But your victory, getting in a car and going to the movies by yourself, going on vacation, I
Yeah.
feel like, oh my God, yay. I mean, it's so huge. And I mean, I'm just overcome with emotion for you. I mean, you're amazing.
Thank you.
Your story is really gonna help so many people, honestly, because that is a tough story you have there.
Yeah.
And I am so proud of you, and I've known you for 45 minutes. And seriously, you are amazing.
Thank you. That's why I have to say in closing, I started a podcast called Healing Struggles, talking about grief and depression. And
Oh,
I started on my healing journey, I started writing.
okay.
And my grandmother was glad because she said that's something, I never would have thought that I would do because I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And I have several journals of poetry, and I'm attempting to put together a poetry book in memory of my mother.
Oh,
Um,
wonderful.
yes, so that you said would help me. That my writing, um, prayers, meditation, exercising, and being on a pretty healthy eating has helped me. And one second, Michelle,
Okay.
baby,
Okay, you're gonna carry her around?
I do. It's a therapy baby. And when I first got it, I told my therapist about it, and she says, and I showed it to her, and I said, "What do you think?" And she says, "If it helps you, by golly,
Why not?
why not?" And I get the stares and but when I start telling people the story, and then they're like, "Oh, okay," and then they start asking questions. "You comb my hair?" I said, "Yes, I comb my hair. I
Yeah,
change clothes,"
why
and she
not?
goes with me everywhere. I
Okay.
took her with me. She goes with me everywhere, and
People have
so
therapy, all kinds of therapy items.
right,
That's your thing, and who cares what people think?
exactly. That's
You've
what I
come
said.
so far. Who cares
Yes,
what you think? No,
yes.
that's wonderful that you found something like that.
Mhm.
That is
So
just amazing.
that's, that's my story. the speeded up version of my story.
Right, right. No, it's incredible. And like I said, you're definitely going to help a lot of people with this story. You have such a glow about you, and I can't imagine like what is the time frame of when you got help to now?
The time frame, because that's why I haven't practiced, because I wound up getting disability.
Mhm.
So probably about 5 years, because
Okay.
they're passed in 2015. And so I'll say things started really spiraling out of control for me probably like 2018.
Okay.
Um, and I forgot to say, my mother passed in 15, then my sister passed in 18, then I had my first cousin who I was close to passed in 19. And so, yeah.
And then every time somebody passed and you had to go to the services, you were
Mhm.
thinking of your mom, and then it was just so
And
overwhelming.
I forgot this.
Okay.
This is most
But when you
important.
have a lot, it's hard to remember everything, so it's okay. What?
This very important. I had a friend, I was doing, pretty well. Like I said, I hadn't been practicing, but I had a friend who we went to church together. She was a nurse as well. And she had reached out to me because she was in a rehab to see if I would come and do a live-in, and take care of her, because they didn't want her to come home, because her husband died on the 1st of January of last year.
Okay.
And I went and took care of her, and
Mm.
I walked in and found her dead on the floor, March the 26th of last year.
I'm
So
so
that kind of took me back a little bit. I
yeah.
went through depression. It didn't last long. For about a month, I went through a depression for that. So yeah, I didn't. I I never would have thought that I would have gotten here, but like I said, through prayer, thank God, I said I won't go back. I can't go back.
No,
And
you've come too far to go back,
yes,
and
and
you have
so
to remember that.
sitting in that movie theater, I had to text my sister. I says, you know, I said I did it. I said I'm in the theater. I said I had a little bit of anxiety, but I'm here.
That's amazing. I mean, that is just your journey has been so traumatic, and you're coming out on the other side. You're not all the way there, because I don't think we're ever all the way there. We have way too much trauma, and we have to just put one foot in front of the other every single day and show
Mhm.
up for yourself. And you're doing that, and you are going to inspire so many people.
I hope so.
You don't. You're already inspiring me. You've got me crying over here. You really are. I mean, you're the reason that, I'm doing this podcast on, taking these horrible situations and look at what you can do at the
Right.
most horrible time of your life. You can pull
Absolutely.
out of it. And I know
Absolutely.
people are really going to connect with you for sure.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
you're going to help other people, and that's almost the reason for going through so much trauma, is maybe to tell your story and help others.
And you know what? And that's what I've come to the conclusion. And that's what my sister and my pastor,
Mhm.
have told me. You had to go through this. And my sister tells me all the time, you have a testimony. You have a
Yes.
testimony.
And even if you can go into your church and share your story, because how many people really know your story? They know you kind of went through something, but I bet if you were able to get up there and share your story, you would have half the church around you, because they have stories too. You know,
Right.
you're not alone, and then you can show them that they're not alone either. Did
Yeah.
you say you had a website?
I have a podcast. It's called Healing Struggles.
Healing Struggles. Okay,
Hmm.
because my podcast comes out April 1st.
Hmm.
So I'm, editing, going through all of that, and then I will let you know when it airs. But
Okay.
I'm going to put your stuff on my website. So I
Good.
want to make sure I get all of that on there for you. And then is your journaling, are you making a book of the poems,
Yes,
or
yes,
is it already done?
no, it's not already done. I'm working on it. It's in work in progress.
Awesome. It's a very big goal for sure. And you make sure when that gets published, you let me know and I'll put it on my website as well. I'm going to support everybody who comes on my podcast
I
as much
appreciate
as
that.
I can, because
I appreciate that.
I mean, you guys coming on is so special to me that you
Mhm.
chose me to, share your story. And it just,
When
thank
I
you.
saw that, I had to reach out. I'm like,
I'm so
oh,
glad you did.
that's me.
That is
That's me.
you. That is you. And that's what I'm hoping to do for everybody. So I'm so glad you shared everything with me today.
Absolutely.
I
Thank
know
you
it
so
was
much.
hard. It was very hard. We're both crying, and so thank you so much, Mimi, and I wish you the absolute best. And maybe we can do a follow-up, like in 6 to 8 months, and we can see where you're at. Okay?
Absolutely. Yeah. Reach out to me. Definitely. Keep in contact.
I definitely will. Thank you so much.
So that was Mimi Randolph. And what do you guys think about her therapy tools? I'm very interested in knowing what you think. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and on all your favorite podcast platforms at Turning Pain into Strength. See you all next week.